The Boys from Across the Sea. In the winter of 1942, the world felt very large, and the sky over England felt very heavy. A young boy named Arthur lived in a small coastal town where the sea was the color of a rainy Tuesday. Every day, Arthur walked down to the harbor to watch the horizon, wondering when the help his father talked about would finally arrive. One morning, the mist didn't just hold the smell of salt, it held a deep, rhythmic thumping sound. Through the gray curtain, massive shapes began to appear. They weren't like the fishing boats Arthur knew. These were giants made of steel, painted the color of shadows, cutting through the waves with a purpose that made the air hum. The first ship docked with a groan of metal and a splash of heavy ropes. A ramp lowered, and out stepped a man in a uniform of olive green. He carried a heavy canvas bag over his shoulder and a smile that seemed much too bright for such a cloudy day. This was Silas, a soldier who had traveled thousands of miles across the Atlantic. Arthur stood by the crates of fish, feeling very small as the giant men in green boots marched past. Silas stopped in front of him. He looked at Arthur, then at the gray sky, and then back at the boy. He knelt down so they were eye to eye, his boots clicking softly on the damp stone. "Is this London?" Silas asked with a voice that sounded like dusty roads and warm sunshine. Arthur giggled and shook his head. Silas laughed, a booming sound that startled the seagulls. He explained that he came from a place called Nebraska, where the land went on forever and there wasn't a drop of salt water in sight. Silas reached into his deep pocket and pulled out something wrapped in bright, shiny paper. He handed it to Arthur. "We call this chocolate where I'm from," Silas said. Arthur had almost forgotten what chocolate looked like. He took it carefully, as if it were a piece of gold. As the sun tried to peek through the clouds, Silas walked with Arthur toward the village. The street was narrow and lined with crooked brick houses. Silas looked up at the chimneys and the mossy roofs, marveling at how old everything felt. To him, the village looked like something out of a storybook. The news of the arrival spread faster than the wind. Arthur ran ahead to the bakery, waving his cap and shouting to everyone he saw. He wanted the whole town to know that the Americans were here and that they brought smiles and stories from a world away. Soon, the fields outside the town were filled with the sounds of hammers and shovels. Silas and his friends were busy building a camp, turning the muddy grass into a city of tents. Even though the work was hard and the rain kept falling, Silas hummed a tune that sounded like hope. That evening, Arthur and Silas sat on the low stone wall overlooking the harbor. The world didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. The ships were still there, and the soldiers were still there, but now they were friends. Together, they watched the first stars blink into life over the English Channel.